Hi guys, Michelle McRory back here. So I'm starting a new series called Lessons from the Trail. So I'm a pretty avid outdoorsy woman and I go out on these long excursions and I always learn something while I'm out there pushing myself. So I thought I would take those lessons and relate it to business. So my latest excursion was the difference between success and giving up, and the mindset you need to have in order to succeed versus giving up. So my latest excursion, I went out for a very leisurely half-day hike, about 6 miles, nothing too big, not a lot of elevation gain, and it turned into a full day, slightly epic 16-mile hike. I wasn't technically lost. I knew where I was on the trail, but I was just getting a little turned around. I thought I would turn this, what was initially an out and back trail, into a loop. So I thought I could find the junction and create my own loop out of it, and it just did not quite work out the way I initially envisioned it, and it was a very last minute decision. But anyways, I struggled very, very much, especially at the end of this excursion, because I was just not conditioned to hike 16 miles. I also didn't bring the right shoes, and I wasn't very well, I didn't really take care of myself to push my body that hard, and I felt it. What I learned through that, however, was what it takes inside the mind to keep you going, even though something comes across that it is hard, and the difference between success and actually getting the success you want and giving up. So the first lesson from this epic adventure is self-compassion. So it's so important to have compassion with yourself, especially when something's really hard. At the end of this hike, around mile 13, so within the last 3 miles, my knees, well, before this, my knees started flaring up. I have some knee pain, and I also developed 2 blisters on my left heel on mile 10, so I had to still hike 6 miles with these 2 huge blisters on my foot. So I was in excruciating pain at the end of this hike, to the point where 3 miles, that was mostly downhill and flat, took me 3 hours because I was in so much pain. So there was points of that hike, those last 3 miles, where I was literally hiking less than a half a mile, very, very slow. Snail's pace slow, because I was in so much pain. And usually this is the time in my hike where I can get really depressed, where I can say, oh my gosh, I'm getting older, my body is giving up on me, I'm not going to be able to do the adventures I still want to do in my life, and I can get in a really bad place. So instead of getting to that place, I treated myself as if I was my own client, if I was like my sister or my mom or a friend that was going through something, that was going through exact same thing, and how I would treat them in that moment. So I completely shifted my mindset and just gave myself a ton of compassion. So when there would be a kind of a steep downhill, and that's really where the pain in my knee would flare up a lot, where I just wanted to break down. So instead of just breaking down and be like, okay, this is just a little bit of downhill, go as slow as you want, and then it eases out, like, you got this. And I literally had to talk to myself like that, in this very gentle, very compassionate voice, for like 3 hours straight while I was in so much pain. And I was able to make it. I ended up getting back to my car about midnight. It was dark. And but I felt okay. I actually still had energy. I felt like well taken care of, like everything was gonna be okay. But I generated that ease in myself by talking to myself in a very compassionate way. I think it's really easy to, treat ourselves with kind of this disrespect, like this negative self-talk, and not realizing how much that can really stop you in your tracks. But if you switch it and talk to yourself like you were your own best friend, you feel so much better and you can accomplish more than you ever thought you can accomplish. So I can definitely see that in business as well. Just being compassionate, no matter where you're at in business. If you think you should be further than where you are, just take a step back and have compassion. So the second lesson I learned from the trail is this self-motivation. There was a time on the trail where I was just deadly tired. I was going on this uphill, and I developed these blisters, so I had to like take my shoe off and actually push the back heel of my shoe down because the back heel was rubbing against this blister so bad, so I had to relieve that pressure. So I kind of converted my shoe into like an open heel sandal essentially, and it was just really frustrating. And instead of talking to myself like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you got turned around, like you never get lost, like what's your problem, you're out of practice, like what were you thinking, kind of getting into that like despair, like, oh, you're so stupid kind of thing, I turned it around. It was like, wow, you got this. Like all you have to do is one step at a time, and you'll get up this huge mountain, this huge hill. It was a mountain, it wasn't a hill. And so I did that for, gosh, I don't even know how many hours, but I just kept on saying like, you got this, keep on going, like go ahead and take a break, it will feel really good to take a break. And just listening to myself and just motivating myself and allowing myself to take breaks and then getting up and keep on going. I literally was doing this self-motivation talk of like, you got this, one step at a time, like it's okay to make mistakes, like we'll get there, all of these motivational talks. And it was so funny because I actually, even though I was in pain because of my blister and my knees started kind of acting up, I felt energy. I had energy to continue. And in fact, I was actually having a little fun in there as well. So the last one is celebration. So I got back to the car around midnight after, especially the last 3 hours were just extremely excruciating. And I thought I would, go ahead and drive home, which was another 3 hours back to the city, out of the mountains where I was. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not going to drive anywhere right now. I'm actually going to completely rest and just sleep in my car at this trailhead until the morning. And then when I get home, I'm going to take a long shower and then really, do some first aid to my knees and my feet and just really take some self-care. And then later that night, I actually went out for a beer and had a celebratory beer to celebrate this like epic day in the woods. And so no matter what, even if something is frustrating, there are wins in business and in life, and it's so important just to celebrate those, no matter how small. Go out and celebrate those wins, whether that means, for me it was like a long hot shower and then a beer later that evening, or whatever that little celebration is for you, to really see yourself as a victor and see yourself as someone that rises above the hardships of life and business. Like, make sure you set aside that time for celebration, because we have to celebrate the wins, no matter how little they are, because you can really get worn down, especially if you don't have any self-compassion or self-motivation, and it can feel very wearing to the point of giving up, right? So between self-compassion and self-motivation and celebrating the wins, these are all the differences between success and giving up. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little story, this lesson from the trail and how it relates to business. If you have any lessons that you'd like to share, or how you can, or think about how you can be more self-compassionate or motivation, please share. And I will talk to you later. Bye.